Today, we're going to dive into the essential facts about contraception and abortion. We'll look at the science, the options, and the context, so you have solid information to understand these really crucial health topics. So let's start with a really telling number. This chart shows that a whopping 95% of all unintended pregnancies are linked to either not using contraception at all or using it inconsistently. That one statistic, it just perfectly frames why understanding our options is so incredibly important. Okay, so just to make sure we're all starting from the same place, what are we actually talking about when we say conception? Well, the definition is pretty straightforward. It's anything, a device, a substance, or a method, used to prevent conception. That's it. That's the foundation for everything else we're about to cover. Now, preventing pregnancy is obviously the main goal, right? But the role of contraception actually goes much, much further. It's really a powerful tool for a person's overall health and well-being. Yeah, it's about so much more than just preventing pregnancy. For many people, it can reduce the risk of certain cancers, help manage really difficult menstrual cycles, and, of course, some methods like condoms protect against STIs. And when you think bigger picture, by enabling family planning, it becomes this amazing tool for gender equality, opening up all kinds of educational and economic doors. So what are the options out there? I know, it can feel a little overwhelming. So to make it simple, we're going to organize them into a framework I like to call a tour of the tiers, and it's all based on how effective they are. This chart here is basically our roadmap. It breaks down contraception into 3 tiers. Tier 1 up at the top is the most effective, and Tier 3 at the bottom is the least. So let's walk through each one, starting at the very top. All right, let's start with the gold standard. Tier 1 methods are the heavy hitters when it comes to effectiveness. We're talking less than 1 pregnancy for every 100 women in a full year. These are often called the set it and forget it options, and for good reason. And the stars of Tier 1 are what are known as LARCs, or long-acting reversible contraceptives. On the left, you're looking at an IUD, which is a small device that's placed in the uterus. And on the right, that's a contraceptive implant, a tiny, flexible rod that goes just under the skin of your upper arm. The main takeaway here is just how incredibly low the failure rates are. IUDs are less than 1% likely to fail, and the implant is even better at a tiny 0.05%. This tier also includes permanent options, like sterilization. For men, that's a vasectomy, and for women, it's tubal ligation. Both are also highly, highly effective. Okay, let's move down to Tier 2. Now, these methods are still very effective, but there's a catch. Their success really depends on you using them correctly and consistently. With typical use, we see about 4 to 7 pregnancies per 100 women in a year. You probably recognize a lot of these. We're talking about the daily pill, the weekly patch, the monthly ring, and the injectable shot you get every 3 months. For every single one of these, remembering to use it on schedule is the absolute key to its effectiveness. And that brings us to Tier 3. With these methods, the typical failure rate jumps a lot. We're now looking at more than 13 pregnancies per 100 women in a year. Their effectiveness is almost entirely in the hands of the user, requiring perfect use every single time. Tier 3 really breaks down into 2 camps. On one side, you have barrier methods, which physically block sperm. Think condoms, diaphragms, and sponges. And a huge plus here, condoms also protect against STIs. On the other side are behavioral methods, which are all about timing and awareness, like withdrawal or fertility checking, but they offer 0 protection against STIs. Okay, so with all these different options, how in the world does someone actually choose? Well, it's a deeply personal decision, and it goes way beyond just looking at the failure rate. Choosing a method is really a balancing act. You've got to weigh the effectiveness against any health risks or benefits. You have to think about convenience, cost, and whether you need STI protection. And of course, personal things like your relationship status or your own beliefs are a huge part of the equation too. But let's be real, no method is 100% perfect, and sometimes they just don't get used. So what happens if a condom breaks or a pill gets forgotten? Well, that's where emergency options come into play. Emergency contraception, or EC, can be used for up to 5 days after unprotected sex to prevent a pregnancy from even starting. And this is a really, really crucial point I want to emphasize. EC works by preventing ovulation or fertilization. It does not interrupt an existing pregnancy. It is not an abortion pill. And that brings us to our final section. We're going to talk about the reality of abortion in the United States, looking at the data, the methods, and the legal landscape that surrounds it. To really understand the context here, we have to start with this number. Research shows that nearly 1 in 4 women in America will have an abortion in their lifetime. That shows that this is a common experience in many, many people's reproductive lives.
This graph really tells a story. You can see the U.S. abortion rate peaked back in the early 80s and then began a steady, decades-long decline, hitting a historic low in 2021 before a recent tick back up. It just goes to show how things like access to contraception and changing laws can really influence these rates over time.
The vast majority of abortions, we're talking 90%, happen in the first trimester. These are typically done either with medication, pills, or through a minor procedure called an aspiration. The other 10% happen in the second trimester, usually through a procedure known as dilation and evacuation, or D&E.
The legal landscape has seen some massive shifts over the past 50 years. In 1973, Roe v. Wade established a nationwide right to abortion. Then, in 92, the Casey decision upheld that right but allowed states to add restrictions. And most recently, in 2022, the Dobbs decision completely overturned Roe, sending the power to regulate abortion back to each individual state.
You know, despite all of the heated political debate, if you look at the data on public opinion, the picture is actually pretty clear. This shows that a huge majority of Americans, 85%, believe abortion should be legal in at least some circumstances. Only a small fraction think it should be totally illegal.
Wow, okay, we have covered a ton of ground, from the different tiers of contraception all the way to the complex reality of abortion. But it all comes back to one thing: having accurate information to make the decisions that are right for you. Understanding your options is the first and most powerful step. So as we wrap up, the real question is this: what's the most important factor for you?